Part 108. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1071. Chapter 1071 The Backbone of Broken Gold Beach. Ji-Yin quickly responded, "Auntie, you're too polite, but it's just a trivial matter. Our family and I don't worry about it. He's just an outsider, and he was instigated. There's no need to worry about it. When you go back, please advise the eldest lady not to hurt her body over such a trivial matter. The friendship between our two families is not something that can be broken up by just messing with each other." Okay, Mrs. Gier was so happy, especially after hearing the good news that Warner called her aunt, which was so close. Ji-Yin asked Beizhu. Beizhu went out to visit relatives. "When will she come back? I miss her so much. I'm waiting for her to come back to hold a flower viewing party and have a good get-together." Mrs. Gier smiled and said, "If it had been before, she might have had to play outside for a few more days, but now that you are out of the palace, you probably won't come back tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow will be early. Oh, then I'll need a barbecue when I get back to Sujintan. I'll bake more of Beizhu's favorite snacks." Ji-Yin smiled so hard that his eyes were crooked. Everyone laughed and couldn't help but envy the friendship between the little girls. It was so pure and joyful. After talking for a while, Mrs. Lu and Mrs. Gia both said goodbye and went home. It's a good thing that Mrs. Seeing finally came here and wanted to sit with her daughter for a while. Ji-Yin followed her out of the house, and when they separated at the intersection, she took the carriage and went straight to Broken Gold Beach. Warner had already sent the news back, and everyone in the old house was eagerly waiting for it. Grandma he took the girls and boys to clean up the princess and then the old house. She wished that there was no dust at all in the yard. The village chief also went to the old house again and again, asking whether he needed to kill chickens and sheep, and then asking if he needed manpower. Those old people who are idle at home always hang around the door of their old houses unconsciously. There were even two old men who gave some exquisite straw baskets, saying that they could use them when picking fruits when the princess came back. Just like that, Ji-Yin's carriage turned down the path, and before it reached the wooden fence blocking the road, everyone in the second village ran out first. "The princess is back, the princess is back." The women in the workshop didn't even have time to take off their aprons, and the boys were jumping and screaming. The veterans rubbed their hands and couldn't say what they wanted to say, so they could only keep smiling. On the contrary, Lao He and others shouted loudly, "Princess, you are back. When will you arrange errands for us? This beautiful sunny day cannot be wasted." Ji-Yin jumped out of the carriage without using an umbrella to protect himself from the sun. She smiled and waved her hands to everyone, and responded, "Don't worry, everyone. I will live in the village permanently from now on, and we will discuss things slowly. Today is too late. You can sort out the things that need to be dealt with in the workshop and everywhere. I will come over tomorrow to deal with them." "Okay, it's great that the princess is back, we have someone to make the decision," the women shouted, with smiles on their faces. The main family is their backbone. Without a master in charge, they are afraid of doing anything and have no confidence. Now that the master is back, there is someone to support and make decisions in everything. All they have to do is work hard. After saying a few words, Lao He jumped onto the carriage shaft and took the young boy's riding crop with his own hands. Ji-Yin got on the carriage again and headed all the way to the old house. The people in the second village slowly dispersed. There was still work to be done, but this time the men were much more energetic. Ji-Yin opened the small window at the front of the car and asked Lao He and others how they were doing and if there was anywhere they wanted to go. Lao He was also open-minded and responded, "Princess, if you go to the sixth young master, it will be easy. We can go back and forth in 3 or 4 days. But master, if you want to go there, you need to make more preparations and bring more people. I heard that the drought is more severe in the south. I'm afraid the road will be uneven, and many people will easily go astray in order to survive. Okay, then Uncle Hey, please get ready. In 2 or 3 days, go to my sixth brother's place first. When you come back, I will also prepare the things for you to send to the elder brother. Then we will go to the southwest. Jiyan responded. I would like to ask if there are any caravans coming along, which will always give me a little more confidence. Okay, don't worry, princess, I will go to the city to look for you tomorrow. Lao He readily agreed. Within a few words, the carriage entered the village. The village chief, Uncle Zhao, and others who had been waiting under the big tree for a long time gathered around him, so they could not avoid another round of greetings. The weather is hot, and Jiyan actually can't eat anything. But the village chief, Uncle Zhao, and other elderly people were very caring and had already pulled out the fattest pig from the pig house and were waiting to send it to the Lord of Hell to report. Jiyan could only smile and said, "It's been a long time since I had a big pot meal with everyone. Why don't we stew more, and everyone in the village, old and young, share a bowl and have a lively meal? Otherwise, it would be a pity that the meat can't be stored in such a hot day." The village chief immediately responded, "Okay, listen to the princess. Wait until I have someone call Jing Lichhan and them all. They also come here every now and then to take a look, because they are afraid that the princess will not care about the village." Jiyan feels a little regretful. Recently, he has really only been focusing on the city and neglecting the village. She then said, "In that case, let's make it more lively. Slaughter a few more sheep and make some sheep soup for everyone to replenish their health." After unloading the luggage, the carriage returned to the city and hauled dozens of jars of wine. "It would be better to bring back my second uncle and Mr. Wen, and have a drink together as a reward for everyone's hard work recently." Before the village chief could respond, the men who were laughing and listening to the excitement started cheering. In fact, everyone's life is easy, and if you want to drink, you can always pour a bowl of it to relieve your fatigue. But this is completely different from the wine the master rewards. It is comfortable for oneself to drink wine, but it is pride for the host to enjoy wine. Soon, the news spread throughout the village. The old and young women quickly organized and rekindled the stove. Those who go to the fields to pick vegetables, those who kill chickens and sheep, those who wash pigs and drain them, and those who divide meat and cut vegetables. Everyone is busy and there is constant laughter and laughter. He soon was still Zhongluo, and wanted to let the master take a noon, and see it like this. After waiting for the good news, I went back to the princess's mansion for a walk, and he also took the girls and boys to join the team preparing the meals. When the sun set over the western hills, the carriage turned back from the city. One cart was filled with wine, and the other cart was filled with Li Laoer, Mr. Wen, and Luz Haiheng, plus Mao Gear, Zhaiman, Xiuji, and Guo Wenhao. It was packed to the brim. It turns out that the academy has been unblocked. Brother Cat, who is well informed, also heard that Gu Li became the prince. He felt like a rabbit in his heart, and he couldn't wait for a moment. After lunch, he asked for leave and went back to the earl's mansion. Of course Zhaiman Xiaja and Guo Wenhao will follow. Just in time, there was another big pot of rice in the village, so they came back to join in the fun. Seeing that the old houses that used to be deserted were no longer busy with people coming and going, the villagers were very emotional. I wish I could keep this moment forever. 2 updates today. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1072. Chapter 1072. The Standard for Bullies. The village chief went home to get some things. When he came back, he saw people outside the Li family yard. Even if everyone couldn't help, they were still willing to squat on the wall and sweat profusely. He couldn't help shouting, "Why are you all gathered here? Be careful of getting sunburned." The villagers smiled honestly and responded, "Village chief, we just want to join in the fun." It's rare for so many people to come back from the old house. The village chief smiled and waved his hands, giving everyone relief pills. Don't worry, the princess will come back to stay permanently. Do you think that the place where the princess is still can be deserted? My uncle, Mr. Wen, the seventh young master, and the third master will definitely come back often. That's true, everyone was happy to hear this, finally relieved, and smiled more confidently. When night falls, the sun sets, and the earth that has been scorched all day finally cools down. The evening breeze quietly brought a hint of coolness, causing the naughty boys to take off their coats and run around, screaming from mosquito bites from time to time. But this didn't stop them from having fun, running here to drink soup, running there to grab a steamed bun, and occasionally shamelessly wandering to the wine table, where they could even eat a chicken drumstick to satisfy their cravings. Young and old men from both inside and outside the village sat at 7 or 8 tables. The wine jars opened their mud seals, and before eating the food, they took a bowl to soothe their throats. Li Lauer, Mr. Wen, Luz Haiheng, and others have always had no official pretensions in Sujintan. They chatted with the old people about household matters and trivial matters in the fields, and they were extremely cordial and friendly. The second time we entered the courtyard, there were 3 more tables. Ji Yin accompanied Aunt Wu, Xiao Kuier and other young and old women, and chatted while eating. She had parents in the east and a family in the west, so she didn't worry about the lack of topics at all. Ji Yin took this opportunity to make up for the favors he owed over the past period of time. For example, if a child is born in the family, a longevity lock and 2 pieces of fine cloth will be given as a gift. For example, if your family marries a daughter-in-law or a daughter, you can also make up for it with 2 pieces of good material, a pair of silver bracelets, etc. Things are not valuable, but the rare thing is the thought. All women who received gifts were beaming and overjoyed. Those who didn't get a gift also warmly invited her. "Princess, my son will get married in the autumn, and Princess must have a wedding drink then. Of course, my aunt will remind me when the time comes, and I will ask Bai Yunjian to make a batch of wedding cakes to help add some happiness to the family." The good news was answered happily, without any impatience. Everyone couldn't help but sigh. "I'm also worried that the princess won't like our village after living in the palace for a long time. People say that the palace is like a palace in heaven, it's very beautiful, and the walls are all inlaid with gold." "Yes, I heard about it too. They said that the roads in the palace are all made of white jade. This is such a waste of a good thing. Such a good jade bracelet is so good, why is it trampled underfoot?" Everyone was talking non-stop and laughing at the good news. In fact, no matter how prosperous the world is, it is not as peaceful as one's own home. However, she would not spoil the atmosphere by making any big remarks at this time. Everyone is just curious and just saying a few words to cheer up. After a busy night, when you wake up in the morning, the courtyard will inevitably be in a mess. Ji Yin got up early and came out of the backyard after breakfast. He saw Grandma He and the girls and boys busy. Afraid of being disliked by her master, and he quickly stepped forward and said with a smile, "Princess, the young lady sent 2 big dogs before, and they looked very majestic. You haven't seen them yet, have you? Why don't you take them out for a walk now and let them enjoy the breeze? When the sun comes up, it will be so hot outside that you can't leave even if you want to." Okay. After hearing the good news, Shui Ling immediately ran to the front yard and took 2 big dogs. The big dog has been fed by the family for a while, and has long lost its emaciated appearance. The fur is as smooth as fine satin. Perhaps they are clever by nature, and they actually know very clearly who will be the source of good food and drink for them in the future. Almost as soon as they were brought to Ji Yin, they started wagging their tails very fast and rubbing their big heads against Ji Yin's skirt. Ji Yin didn't have anything delicious at hand, so he took out a few small fish cakes from the space under cover of his shoulder bag. The eyes of the 2 big dogs suddenly lit up. After wrapping the fish cakes with their tongues, Their tails waggled even more. Ji-Yin petted the furry babies for a while, then led them and began to patrol the territory like a bully. It's a pity that you can't bully men and dominate women. It's really a waste of this pomp and posture. The people in the village who were still exchanging cups and cups last night, hugging each other and enjoying the good life with their tongues wagging, have already gone to work in the fields. It hasn't been raining, and it's been getting extremely hot lately. So everyone got up before dawn and worked until 3 o'clock in the morning. Even so, every man in the village still had his skin peeled off layer by layer from the sun. Who knows that every particle of the meal on the plate is hard work, and it is true at all. When the village chief saw Ji-Yin leading 2 big dogs from a distance, he came out of the field with a smile and said, "Hello, Dehei and Erhei are very understanding of human nature and know who the master is. We just met and now they are able to protect the master when he goes out and about." Ji-Yin patted the heads of the 2 dogs and said with a smile, "Are Dehei Erhei the names given to them by the village chief's grandpa? It's so appropriate. I was cleaning up the yard at home, and grandma he asked me to come out for a walk." The village chief nodded, hesitated, and looked around to see if there was no outsider. Then he asked in a low voice, "Princess, I heard last night that boy Gu is actually a big shot. Will he not come back in the future? Will it damage our broken gold beach?" Ji-Yin understood the old man's concerns and quickly comforted him, "Don't worry, Grandpa Village Chief, everything will be fine. Gu Guanqi was brought by Mr. Zhang from outside over the years. Even if we have not taken extra care, at least we have not received any ill treatment, so there is no need to worry, as long as we have a clear conscience. In addition, Gu Guanqi's status is different now, and many people may want to get involved with him, but without any connections or clues, they may decide to come to us. So, the village chief grandpa will help me to restrain the people in the village. Don't talk about it to outsiders or privately. Only by being careful can your life be stable." "Okay, okay," the village chief responded repeatedly, "don't worry, princess, I was also thinking about this, so I wanted to ask. I will definitely tell the people in the village to keep their mouths shut, so as not to cause trouble to the village. Gu Guanqi is a good boy, but his status is different now, so we must not cause trouble for him." He lowered his voice even more, with a bit of emotion and anxiety, and added, "Even if a beggar on the roadside became a landlord, he still doesn't want people to mention the past. What's more, he is the prince of a country and will be the emperor in the future. Let's let alone expose other people's shortcomings. I remember when Steward Gu first arrived at Sujintan, he was as skinny as a bean sprout. Who would have thought that this child was?" Ji-Yin matched his appearance and reminded her in a low voice, "Grandpa Village Chief, didn't you say you won't mention my past? Why did you say it yourself?" "Oops, I forgot." The village chief jumped in fright, raised his hand and slapped his head hard. "I'm so old, I just forgot about it." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1073. Chapter 1073, Taking Advantage of Others' Power. Ji-Yin was amused by the old man and laughed, and then quickly gave the old man a reassurance. "Grandpa, the village chief, doesn't have to be so nervous. Mr. Zhang said last night that he will not leave Sujintan in the future and will retire here with us. Master of heaven and earth, Mr. Zhang is the husband of His Highness the Crown Prince. He has the kindness to teach and take care of him as long as he is in Sujintan. The prince will not treat Sujintan badly. Perhaps, His Highness the Crown Prince will treat us better since we are half of his family here." The village chief blinked twice and finally saw a smiling face. "That's the truth. Scholars respect their teachers. As long as Mr. Zhang is here, we will be fine in Broken Gold Beach." He ran home as he spoke, Mr. Zhang said last night that the jar of wine I hid is delicious, and there is still half a jar left. I will carry it over to him right away. Good news is not stopped, even if you want to, you can't stop it. The old man is quite old, but his legs and feet are still very nimble. I will not talk about how the good news coaxed the elderly in the village. I just said that the protagonist in their mouth, His Royal Highness, had just finished dinner and was going to visit the royal study. As soon as I turned around the corridor next to Zilong Pavilion, I saw several palace maids and eunuchs rummaging around, shouting from time to time, 3 items, 3 items. The prince raised his eyebrows, stopped immediately, and asked, Is Sanjo missing? Several palace maids and eunuchs did not expect to meet the prince, and they were so frightened that they knelt down on the roadside. Eunuch Feng was transferred to Zilong Pavilion just last night and is responsible for serving the prince's daily life. When he saw this, he immediately stepped forward and scolded, His Royal Highness is asking a question, why don't you explain it clearly quickly? One of the little eunuchs was more clever. He quickly took a few steps forward and said respectfully, Back to your highness, the princess left the little fox with her highness as a companion when she left the palace, but the little fox was still sleeping in Highland last night palace, the shadow has disappeared this morning. Her Royal Highness the princess was afraid that the little fox was lost, so she asked her servants to come out and look for her. She didn't expect to block the way of His Royal Highness, so I ask His Royal Highness to forgive me. His Royal Highness the prince nodded, looked around, and then ordered, Eunuch Feng, leave a few people behind to help us find him together. Eunuch Feng was stunned for a moment and then responded, Yes, Your Highness, don't worry, I will search with you. As soon as I find it, I will report back to you. The prince glanced at him with satisfaction and continued to the imperial study. Eunuch Feng breathed a sigh of relief and felt a little proud. I always envy Mr. Yi, but I never thought that he was so lucky that he was sent by the emperor to serve the prince. Since then, the prince has ascended to that position. Is he the same as Mr. Yi? The prince looks serious and dignified, but he is actually not difficult to get along with. No, he has vaguely figured out the prince's temper, and the future is definitely promising. Thinking like this, he happily led his people to look for the fox. As a result, they searched for a long time but found no trace. However, as soon as the prince turned to the corridor beside the imperial study room, he heard a noise in front of him. He subconsciously walked forward and saw a white shadow chirping and jumping around. It's the little fox that can't be found anywhere in Highland Palace. Santiao, the prince shouted subconsciously. The little fox turned its head instantly, maybe it finally saw someone familiar. It rushed forward and ran directly into the prince's arms. It bared its teeth in grievance and kept barking. Okay, okay, His Highness the Crown Prince raised his hand to brush its exploded hair, held it firmly in his arms, and comforted him gently, Don't scream, be careful of yelling. Are you being bullied? Let me vent your anger. The little fox seemed not to understand, and barked for a while before he managed to calm down. The prince patted its head gently, and then looked at the embarrassed Dingbei Marquis opposite. The Marquis is so elegant. Did he enter the palace all morning just to bully a little fox? The Marquis of Dingbei seemed to have been strangled by the neck, and he couldn't make a sound. He originally wanted to enter the palace early and show off his face in front of the emperor and the prince. It would be better to do some errands to show his ability and loyalty. Unexpectedly, as soon as I got here, I saw this little fox strutting past. He wouldn't care if there were cats or dogs around him. But he knew this little fox. Back then, Marquis Zinting led his troops into the mountains and hunted a little fox with 3 tails, just to play with his beloved adopted daughter. Because of this incident, he also gave a report to the emperor, saying that the fox had 3 tails and was an evil creature. But the emperor didn't pay any attention to it. On the contrary, after Zintinghao found out, he dealt with him so hard that he almost lost his job of guarding the city gate. Think about the past few days, he has changed sides, betrayed the Queen Mother, and even his descendants have to bear the infamy for 100 years, just to survive. As a result, the Li family became the benefactors of the prince without having to do anything, and they could gain glory and wealth at their fingertips. This is so unfair. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. He couldn't hold it back for a moment, and just when the little fox walked by, he kicked. "That, Your Highness the Crown Prince, I happened to be passing by, and I didn't know what the little beast was doing, so he rushed towards me like crazy to bite me." Ding Bei Ho glanced at the little fox and was sure that it couldn't speak, so he felt more confident and pulled off his sleeves to show the scratches on his arms to the prince. "Look, the claws of this little beast are too sharp. What should I do if he goes crazy again and bites you or the emperor? Why don't you leave this little beast to me?" The little fox probably couldn't see how proud he was, because the fur on his back exploded again, and he wanted to rush out immediately and scratch him until his face blossomed. The prince hugged it tightly, and then looked at Dingbei with a sneer. "What the Marquis said is really interesting. The princess has raised this little fox for many years. My Highness has had many contacts with it before and has always been very gentle and obedient. Why did it suddenly go crazy when it saw the Marquis? Could it be that the Marquis did something to hurt it?" At this moment, Eunuch Feng had heard the noise and rushed over. He rolled his eyes and hurried forward, making a fuss and shouting, "Oh, Sanjo, why are you here? The third princess has been looking for you. What's wrong with your tail? Why is it all gray? Who kicked it? You recognize it, and I will report it to the princess to vent your anger." When the princess left the palace, she didn't worry about anything. She was just worried that you would be wronged. How come it's only been a day and you were beaten? How can the princess explain to the princess? Ding Bei Ho gritted his teeth secretly when he heard this. He was obviously a beast, and he was beaten when he was beaten, but there were so many people supporting him. He was still about to say a few words of defense when he saw the prince summoning the young not far away. "You are leading the way for Marquis Dingbei, right? Tell me, what did Marquis Dingbei do to make Santiago angry?" The little secretly glanced at Ding Bei Ho, hesitating whether to tell the truth or not. Eunuch Feng raised his foot and gave the young a slap and scolded, "Slave dog, whose eyes are you looking at? Is there anyone here who is more noble than the prince? Have you forgotten who the master is?" The little shrank his neck in fright, and just when he was about to speak, Ding Bei Ho knelt down with a pop. "Two updates are coming today. I couldn't help but wander a bit over the weekend, so the update is late." End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1074. Chapter 1074. Apply eye drops quietly. "Your Highness, I am at fault." Dingbei knelt down without hesitation and admitted his mistake simply. "I just passed by here, and when I saw the little fox, I kicked it, making it angry. I shouldn't provoke without reason. I am guilty. Please punish me, Your Highness, the prince, and I will accept the punishment sincerely." The prince raised his eyebrows and said with a faint smile, "Ding Bei Ho just kept saying that animals are rude. Why did he admit his mistake so quickly? People who don't know may think that His Highness is using his power to suppress the Marquis. No, no, Your Highness, it is all my fault. I am narrow-minded and angry at the little fox." Ding Bei Ho secretly gritted his teeth, but his expression was humble. "I am willing to kneel here for an hour to reflect on my mistakes." The prince touched the little fox, but he didn't kill it all. He said, "Well, since Lord Marquis feels bad about it, just kneel down for a while. It's ventilated here, and it's a good place to cool down." After saying that, he hugged the little fox and walked to the imperial study room. Eunuch Feng glared at Ding Bei Ho, waved his hand and led the young eunuchs to follow him quickly. In the blink of an eye, only the kneeling Marquis Dingbei was left in the noisy corridor just now. He quietly unclenched his clenched fists, his eyes filled with hatred. Originally I thought that even if he was a lackey, he would still be useful to the royal family. I just found out today that he is worse than a lackey. A useless little fox could actually force him, a prince, to kneel on the road. Occasionally, courtiers would visit the emperor and pass by. When they suddenly saw the Marquis of Dingbei kneeling down as punishment, they were all startled. Naturally, it was difficult for them to ask Dingbei Ho, so they could only ask the eunuchs and maids from the side. The young and the maids' answers were surprisingly consistent. The Marquis of Dingbei offended His Highness the Crown Prince. His Highness the Crown Prince did not mind, but the Marquis of Dingbei took the initiative to punish him by kneeling down. Everyone who heard about it couldn't help but frown, and secretly cursed Dingbei for being such a good person at flattering. In order to attract the prince's attention and show my respect and loyalty, I was really shameless. Your Majesty, you have actually done this. Dingbei Ho originally planned to win some sympathy points, but he failed to achieve his goal and was ridiculed. Of course this is a story for later. His Royal Highness carried the little fox all the way to the imperial study. Everyone on the way looked at him more. The prince is tall and tall, with thick eyebrows and big eyes. He is handsome and noble. He also likes to wear black embroidered dragon robes. But now he is hugging a little fox that is all white. The sharp contrast is really indescribable and beautiful and harmonious. When the emperor raised his head, he was stunned when he saw his son like this. When he saw clearly the appearance of the little fox in his son's arms, he smiled and said, "Why is the prince holding Santiago? Didn't the little fox come out of the palace with Jiyan?" The prince saluted, then sat casually by the desk, and said with a smile, "It is said that when the princess left the palace, she left the little fox with the third princess as a companion. But this little guy was running around, and he was kicked by Marquis Dingbei just now. He was so angry that he ran around. When I happened to see it, I picked it up." The emperor frowned and responded, "Marquis Dingbei? He is a marquis, why should he care about a fox?" The prince took a peach to the little fox in the fruit plate and said casually, "It's up to the master to fight the fox. He's not arguing with the fox. He probably doesn't like the Li family." "Humph," the emperor sneered, "you ungrateful thing. He is alive because he presented evidence of the Queen Mother's crimes, but those evidences were found by the Li family. The Li family didn't say a word, but he was so full that he wanted to smash the bowl." The prince took off his handkerchief and wiped the peach juice from the little fox's mouth, and praised, "Father, Dingbei is really a hero among men, capable of bending and stretching. Just now I saw that my son was angry, and he actually asked to kneel on the Yang road. Not afraid of embarrassment." As expected, the emperor became even more angry and cursed, "What do you mean by being able to bend and stretch? It's just for outsiders to see, forcing us, father and son, to show favor. Otherwise, others will say that our father and son are mean and ungrateful. After all, he has made a contribution to uncovering the crimes of the Queen Mother. If he is treated harshly as a meritorious official, it will chill everyone's heart." After that, he told General Manager Yi, "Go and have a look, reward the Northern Marquis with a precious sword and a horse, and let him go back to his mansion." General Manager Yi immediately smiled and responded, "Don't worry, Your Majesty, I will definitely reward you. Give the reward in a lively manner and let everyone know how much you value Marquis Dingbei." The emperor waved his hand, smiled and cursed, "You are the smartest old slave, go ahead." Mr. Yi quickly retreated. When he was going out, he couldn't help but glance at the prince quietly. The prince was lowering his head, with an open-minded and studious look on his face, listening carefully to the emperor's explanation of Dingbei Ho's dirty intentions. Does the prince really not know? Not necessarily. But he knew he had to pretend not to know, otherwise how could the emperor openly reward Dingbei, but actually feel shameless and disgusted in his heart? From now on, even if Dingbei is valued by the emperor again, there is no need to worry. The prince simply ended the hope of Dingbu holding great power. Manager Yi lowered his head further and further, and did not dare to straighten up until he got down the steps. This future emperor is probably even more thoughtful than the emperor. Fortunately, with his many years of hard work serving the emperor, when the emperor dies, he can find a place to leave the palace to retire, so he no longer has to get involved in these intrigues. It's just. Eunuch Feng came in from outside and saw Manager Yi looking at him with sympathy on his face. He was really confused. He asked tentatively, "Chief Steward, I just came from Highland Palace and have already informed the princess that the little fox is in the imperial study. Do you think, is there anything else I want to tell you?" Manager Yi waved his hand and said, "I'm going to run an errand. You take good care of the masters. I'll be back soon." Eunuch Feng quickly agreed, and Manager Yi left. Eunuch Feng rolled his eyes and had no idea what to think, so he stood at the door obediently, waiting for his master's orders at any time. In the house, after the little fox had eaten his fill of peaches, he found a corner of the table, curled up and took a nap. The emperor took out a list and presented it to the prince. "Look, this is your future concubine." The prince was following the big tail of the little fox. When he heard this, he was stunned, but he still opened the list. As a result, all of them are the daughter of a certain minister, the granddaughter of a certain duke. He was silent for a while and then asked, "Father, I haven't chosen a concubine yet. What is the list?" "Silly boy," the emperor smiled nonchalantly, "choosing a concubine is just an excuse. From now on you are the head of a country, how can you choose your concubines at will? These are all appointed candidates, who will be helpful to you in taking over the government in the future. Even if you don't like them, you should be polite and courteous. As for choosing concubines, choose 2 women from lower family backgrounds that you like. It will just relieve your boredom on weekdays." Maybe he didn't hear the prince's response. The emperor frowned and reprimanded, "Even if you are the son of an ordinary family, you must be well matched when marrying a wife. What's more, you are the prince. Your marriage is a state matter and cannot be willful." A complex look flashed in the prince's eyes, and he gently released the little fox's tail. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1075. Chapter 1075, No Longer Fighting Alone. The emperor thought his son understood, and did not continue. It was the prince who took the initiative to change the subject, picked up a Ministry of War brochure and asked, "Father, is it time for the 3rd batch of military rations to be sent to Jiangbei?" The emperor was pouring tea. He looked at the tea leaves floating in the cup. He was silent for a long time and then said, "There is a drought and there is a shortage of food everywhere. We can't raise money at the moment. It will probably take another half a month." The prince frowned and responded, "Now that each family is focusing on their sons and ministers to select concubines, should we send some news to them so that they can take the initiative to share the pressure of military rations? Speaking of these aristocratic families, they are greedy for pleasure first when it comes to using them. Everyone pretends to be deaf and dumb. Last time we temporarily borrowed military rations, they had to be guarantors of the Li family before they would nod. It is really hateful. It seems that retaking Jiangbei and unifying the country is only our royal matter and has nothing to do with them. The emperor doesn't like aristocratic families either, but he thinks about things much further than what is in front of him. So, he responded vaguely, "You have just returned to the palace and have not yet established yourself in the court. You cannot force the family too much for the time being. Just wait a little longer." The prince wanted to say more, but he wisely realized that his father looked bad, so he shut up. It's actually a little fox taking a nap, with its ears raised high. The sun is rising little by little, and the earth is in scorching mode again. Those with thinner shoes have to jump forward when walking on the road. The sun falls on the gravel everywhere in broken gold beach, reflecting dazzling light, which actually lives up to its name. The most diligent farmers have no choice but to hide at home and take a rest. Place a straw mat in front of and behind the house, bare arms, waving a fan, fighting against the ruthless midsummer. However, there were a few naughty boys who were not afraid of death. They ran to the almost dry river with their families on their backs, hoping to play in the water for a while. However, they were discovered by my mother, who yelled and yelled back to avoid getting a beating. The Lee family's old house has a lot of trees planted, which makes it a little cooler than other places. The windows of the suite in the backyard are open, and there are trees in front of the windows. The occasional wind blows through, bringing a little bit of coolness. Jian and Wanner were sitting opposite each other at the table, discussing making a list. Early tomorrow morning, Lao He will lead the team to set off. For the time being, I will go to Qingming County and send some food to Brother Li. 300 miles for a trip and 600 miles for a round trip. Fortunately, it is still within the limits of Xindu, the roads are easy to travel, and safety is guaranteed. Jian checked the snack box and wrote the number and category on it. These snacks are all made by her, they are durable and delicious. Half of it is to satisfy my brother's craving, and the other half is filled with decent gift boxes, ready to give gifts to my brother or reward subordinates. Wanner is counting her clothes and supplies, which is not a simple task. Although most of the people went to Quanzhou with grandma and the others, the needlework lady in the home mansion was very capable. She could sew a lot of new clothes, shoes, and socks, including pen covers, fan covers, and other small items every month. Now we will distribute them according to the head count. Jian sent extra people to Xindu to buy the recently published poetry collection and travel notes, as well as new paper, ink, etc., and gathered several more boxes. As for the golden fruits and jade melons she secretly picked from space, Shui Ling has already led people to put them into baskets. I will pack a lot of saltpeter tomorrow and make ice while cooling down on the way, so I can make it to Qingming County. It's just not going to work if it's just to be sent to the big brother in the southwest. Because the journey is too long. Wanner couldn't help but be happy when she saw that her sister-in-law had an abacus in one hand, an account book in the other, and occasionally a pen to copy. She was busy and orderly. It's great to have my sister-in-law back home. She will no longer have to fight alone in the future. At this time, Nanny He walked in from outside and reported, "The young lady, the princess, Aunt Wu, and others have brought something for a visit." Wanner raised her head and looked at the sun outside, and asked doubtfully, "Why did they come here with such a bright sun?" Jian guessed a little bit, and said with a smile, "I just came back from the princess's mansion, and I met the villagers. After a while, I said a few words that the convoy was about to leave. I guess Grandma Wu and the others were here to deliver something and wanted to join in the fun." Wanner quickly responded, "Mother He, there is a jade melon in the bucket in the kitchen. Have someone take it out and cut it up for the guests." Mama He responded and went down. Wanner and Jian straightened their clothes and went to the front yard. There is a big tree planted in the southwest corner of the front yard. There is a well under the tree and it is next to the penthouse. It is a rare cool place. On weekdays, the little maids have no work, so they are willing to come here to do needlework and gossip. At this time, several small benches were given up, and Aunt Wu and several other old ladies from the village were seated. Seeing Jian and Wanner coming, Aunt Wu and others quickly stood up to greet them, but were helped by Jian and Wanner and sat down again. "Auntie, we are all family members, so we can't be so polite." Wanner smiled gently and scolded the old ladies, "If there is something going on at home, just send the children to tell them, why bother to go there by yourself? It's such a hot day, if you feel dizzy, and take medicine." Aunt Wu smiled happily, patted Wanner's hand, and replied, "We have all lived through hard times, and we are not afraid of the sun. What's more, Dr. Zhang prepared pills early, and everyone I've given some. If you feel uncomfortable, just take one." Yes, life is so happy today. The other old ladies also sighed with emotion. When I was young, I was exposed to the sun and peeled off a layer of skin all over my body, but I still worked in the fields as usual. Now I am so delicate. Everyone was talking about it, and it immediately became very lively. Soon, Grandma He and the little girl brought up the jade melon. Aunt Wu waved her hands in distress. How could such a precious thing be cut? Now on the market, a jade melon can be sold for 7 or 8 taels of silver. Another old lady also shouted, yes, this is enough for 3 pieces of good cotton. Jiyan couldn't help but laugh. She took the jade melon and put a piece into each of their hands. Grandma Wu, don't feel bad, and quench your thirst quickly. This is what outsiders say, but we are melon growers. And one kind is 100 acres. What's wrong with us eating one? It's like there is one less fruit in the field. Everyone laughed, but could no longer refuse, so they could only eat in small bites, cherishing it very much. After eating one piece of melon, everyone felt much cooler and even refused to eat the second piece. Unable to hear the good news, someone sent the remaining half of the jade melon up the mountain. Brother Cat, Zhimenchiaja, and Guo Wenyuan didn't go back to the academy. They got up early and went to the grass pavilion in the orchard. They called it enjoying the scenery and painting, but who knew what they were naughty about? Aunt Wu opened the basket she brought, revealing several pairs of shoes of different sizes, but they were sewn very carefully and delicately. Princess, I sewed 2 pairs of shoes for the old lady, and the other pairs belong to Hui Niang and the children. Can you help me take them to Quanzhou? Of course you can, Jiyan replied immediately and said with a smile, it's just hard for Grandma Wu to have to sew in such a hot weather. Oh, my family, this is what we should do. Aunt Wu waved her hand and responded, I don't have anything else to do, I just miss your grandma and Hui Niang, mother and son. I'm also happy to do some needlework for them. With her starting point, the other old ladies followed suit and handed over baskets. This one is a mushroom dried at home, and that one is a salted duck egg pickled at home. In short, they are not expensive things, but they are full of heart. Jiyan also missed her grandma and her family. Listening to the old ladies asking questions and having to patiently explain, she felt a little unspeakable in her heart. After finally seeing off the old ladies, I continued to make lists and pack things, and the sky became dark. Mr. Wen and the others didn't come back, but Muju, who was tanned and blackened by the sun, came to the door. 2 updates today. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1076. Chapter 1076. I hugged a dragon's thigh. The little girl guarding the door had not seen Muju for a long time. He changed his appearance again. Now he blocked the door and asked, Who are you? What do you want in our house? Muju couldn't laugh or cry. Just when he was about to speak, Zheng Qi came back from outside and shouted loudly from a distance. Brother Mu, are you back? Muju turned around and smiled, showing his white teeth. Yes, I was stopped as soon as I got to the door. Zheng Qi stepped forward, looked at him carefully, and couldn't help laughing. Brother Mu, what kind of errand are you on? It's too dark not to mention other people, even I can't recognize you. Muju patted the back of his head and said, Stop asking around and take me to see the princess quickly. Zheng Qi quickly spoke to the little girl, and then led Muju into the courtyard. Wanner came out of the kitchen and was happy to see Muju. She knew that Muju was busy with the family during this period, and he was also the future husband chosen by the Marquis for his sister-in-law. No matter whether the marriage happens or not, Muju is busy with her family, so she should always be grateful and take more care of her. So she greeted Muju and said, "Guard Mu, after you have spoken to the princess, remember to stay for dinner. I will ask the kitchen to cook some of your favorite dishes." Muju was not polite, raised his hands in salute, and said with a smile, "Thank you, madam. It would be best if you have meat and steamed buns. I have been hungry for several days, and I wish I could put a cow in my stomach." Wanner quickly turned around and told Shui Yun to add vegetables. There was a cook in the family, but her skills were far inferior to Shui Yun's. After Shui Yun came back, the cook became the foundation, happily learning her skills every day. Muju entered the corner gate of the backyard and saw Ji Yin coming out after hearing the news. The two of them sat directly at the stone table under the tree and started talking. "Where have you been these past few days?" "It's been very hard." Ji Yin glanced at Muju, who had a black charcoal head, and wanted to laugh but felt unkind. Muju didn't think so. Seeing Ji Yin holding back his laughter, he regretted not getting darker. Such a big thing happened in the new capital, and it must be spread out in time. I sent a message to Jiangbei, and I also arranged manpower for the southwest and southeast. In addition, I also secretly kept an eye on a few people. The mansion. In short, I didn't suffer much, but the food and accommodation were certainly not that comfortable. At this time, Shui Ling touched a plate from the house and came out. Ji Yin took a knife and planned to peel a golden fruit for Muju to quench his thirst. He took it directly, opened his mouth and took a big mouthful, and responded vaguely, "I'm not a little girl, so I don't need to be so particular." I cut my hand carefully. As he was talking, he remembered something and took out an exquisite box from his arms and gave it to Ji Yin. "I met it on the road. It looks very beautiful. I bought it for you to play with." Ji Yin opened the box and saw a pair of gold and jade bracelets inside, which were made of transparent ice. A thin gold chain hung from the mouth of the bracelet, and two small jade rabbits hung there. It was really exquisite and cute. "Ah, it's so cute." Ji Yin immediately took it out and put it on her wrist. The white and slender wrists are lined with gold and jade, adding a bit of softness. Shui Ling couldn't help but praise, "This bracelet is so beautiful. It's such a clever idea. It must have been thought out by the master." Muju continued to chew on the golden fruit, with the corners of his mouth raised and unable to get it down. In fact, he had purchased the jade material a long time ago and asked a master to customize it individually. The designs were all drawn by him. Such a good thing can't be found casually on the street. But no matter how it came, it was all for this moment, the joy of the beloved girl. Ji Yin saw that Muju was eating well and was worried that he was hungry, so he asked Shui Ling to go to the kitchen and start dinner early. As a result, as soon as Shui Ling left, the little fox jumped down from the wall. Ji Yin was so surprised that she quickly hugged her and gently smoothed her fur. "Sanjo, why are you back at this time? Are you hungry? Are you tired?" Muju pinched half of the melon in her hand and suddenly felt it was no longer sweet. They all came back from outside, and even he was more tired and farther away, but why didn't he get the treatment like the little fox? The little fox may have guessed what he was thinking, and he crawled into his master's arms even more proudly, wagging his big tail. Ji Yin fed the little fox fruit and asked, "We haven't seen each other for 2 days. Why does Sanjo seem to have gained weight? Did the third princess feed you too much meat?" The little fox rolled his black bean-like eyes and decisively pretended to be stupid. It absolutely cannot admit that it has hugged the thigh of a dragon recently. Fortunately, Ji Yin did not dwell on this small change and asked softly, "Is there something going on in the palace that made you come back all the way?" The little fox immediately started chirping, and occasionally danced and jumped around the table. The more he listened to the good news, the deeper his frown deepened. It was hard to tell whether his expression was disappointment or anger. Muju felt very strange when he saw this, but he didn't say a word, and he didn't dare to interrupt. It wasn't until the little fox finished barking that Ji Yin hugged it and asked, Do you know how long that person will delay? The little fox stretched out his paw, drew a circle on the palm of Jiyan's hand, and then crossed out half of it. Jiyan nodded and took some fish cakes from the satchel for the little fox. The little fox ate happily, and its big tail almost flew away. Muju couldn't bear it any longer. He coughed dryly and asked, "What happened?" Jiyan responded, "The third batch of military rations cannot be delivered to Jiangbei on time. It will be delayed for at least half a month." Muju also looked ugly and asked, "What on earth did that man think? The battlefield ahead is changing rapidly, and there is a lack of food. Do we want the soldiers to starve and kill the barbarians? Food from various places has been collected for a long time. Even if it is a little more difficult, it will not be delayed for half a month. What on earth is he doing? No one in the court has done anything, but he is so cruel. Doesn't it mean that he treats the Marquis like a brother?" Jiyan snorted coldly, "The most ruthless emperor's family. In history, how many emperors have killed their own brothers in order to ascend to power? Besides, my adoptive father is just his cousin. Moreover, it is unlikely that he will be able to transport military supplies in half a month. I'm afraid something might happen." "What else has happened?" Muju was a little annoyed. He had served in the Northern Expeditionary Army and had eaten military meals. Even if the soldiers are not going out to kill the enemy, they still have to train, which consumes a lot of physical strength. However, they only have 2 meals a day, and each person only eats more than half of his food. In the past, the vanguard could occasionally go hunting in the mountains, or grab some food from the barbarians, and even replenish some. But the weather this year is so bad that the mountains and forests in Jiangbei have dried up a lot, and wild animals are not living well. Not to mention the fields, the barbarians drove some slaves to plant a few crops, and most of them died of drought. So much so that it is no longer possible to seize food and use war to support war. Otherwise, if the barbarians are hungry, the slaves may be thrown into the pot. You must know that these slaves were originally Tianhui people who were unlucky enough to be caught. In half a month, the prince will ascend the throne. After the prince ascends the throne, he still has to choose his concubine. Jiyan responded, "It will take a month before the prince will have a firm foothold in the court. By then, no matter how we arrange it, it will definitely be no one has thought clearly about it. Whether you want to keep the reputation of ruling the country for yourself, or give it to your son as a stepping stone, this is a difficult question. But after all, this great achievement needs to be shared between the father and son, and it is not the turn of outsiders." End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1077. Chapter 1077. 1 At the starting line. Muju digested it for a long time without saying a word. He really didn't want to believe that the good news was true. But I have to admit that judging from all the clues in front of me, the person on the dragon throne may really have this intention. Jiyan stroked the little fox's back hair and added another sentence. "I never want to think that people are so bad, but reality is often the most willing to slap people in the face. Therefore, it is better to be prepared for the worst, so as not to have any resistance when the time comes." Muju nodded slightly. The night is getting darker and darker, and the skylight is completely hidden under the horizon. Fortunately, the aroma of the food in the front yard floats over with the naughty evening breeze from time to time, surrounding the quiet and lonely world, adding a bit of the most ordinary and most touching fireworks. "Princess, princess, guard Mu, dinner is ready." Shui Ling came running from the front yard with bright eyes and shouted, "Shui Yun stewed the meat, it's so delicious." Jiyan and Muju both laughed when they heard this, and even the little foxes jumped on the table, chirping non-stop, trying to get benefits for themselves. Jiyan knocked it on the head and promised, "Don't worry, I won't miss your share." Muju finally couldn't bear it anymore and asked, "Can this fox understand you?" Ji-Yin glanced at him in surprise and said with a smile, "It is said that a good hunting dog can compete with a 5-year-old child. Isn't it surprising that the little fox with 3 tails can understand a few simple words? Isn't it strange? No matter how smart the fox is, it can understand human language and draw pictures with its paws. Isn't it too much?" Muju blinked his eyes twice and finally swallowed his doubts. "That's all, the girl he likes is overly smart, so it seems reasonable to raise an overly smart fox." Mao Gear, Zhaimanqiaja, and Guo Wenhao spent another day wandering around outside, with their chests pressed against their backs from hunger. At this moment, everyone was sitting around, and they were flattering each other while eating. "Sister-in-law is so kind. How did you know that we were starving and yet you made so many delicious dishes?" "That's right, the eldest brother is really lucky. After marrying the eldest sister-in-law, we will all enjoy the blessings." Sister-in-law, this sweet and sour short ribs is delicious. Next time I come over, I will have this again." Warner blushed and laughed at being coaxed, and quickly responded, "The food is all made by Shui Yun, and my sister prepared the menu. If you want to thank me, you should thank me." Ji-Yin was peeling the shrimp shells and joked casually, "Oh, I can't help it. There is no status in the family and no warmth in the society. I am tired to death, and my brothers don't take it seriously. I'd better not bother next time, I won't appreciate it." "Ah! Who dares to be ungrateful?" Brother Cat was the first to glare, and like a dog, he held a chicken leg for his sister, and shouted with his teeth and claws, "Who dares to be ungrateful, I will break his legs." That's right, Princess's sister's hands are so precious. People say she has the Midas touch. Who dares not to cherish it? Well, I'll give him a good beating first." Ji-Min quickly agreed. Xiu Ji followed up in time, "Thank you for your hard work, sister princess. I have 2 pieces of good carving ink there. I will send them to my sister tomorrow." Guo Wenhao blushed half red and wanted to join in, but his mouth was not strong enough. Ji-Yin was coaxed into laughing, and took dishes to his brothers one by one. "I'm just kidding, I'll have nothing to do in a few days and go to Luoan to stay for a few days, then I'll prepare delicious food for you every day." "Seriously? Very good. When the time comes, I will apply with the gentleman and we will live outside the hospital for a few days." The Cat brothers were so happy that they made plans to find 2 more jars of good wine and take the opportunity to indulge. The next morning, before it got dark, the Cat brothers were reluctant to do so. Went back to the academy. Actually, compared to other students, they were able to get these 2 days off and go back to Broken Gold Beach to laze around, which was pretty good. After all, most of the students in the college have to study hard and race against time, hoping that one day they will stand out and shine. Brother Mao is the youngest grandson of the Li family. He has a biological father and uncle, and 6 brothers. His only sister is the princess. Even if he lies under the shadow of his home for the rest of his life, he will still have no worries about food and clothing. Zhaiman and Qiaja were from aristocratic families, and they wished that their families had arranged a spacious and flat road to the sky on the day they first became enlightened. Even though Guo Wenhao is alone, he also has the connections left by his deceased grandfather, which is far better than many people. The status of these few people, even in modern times, is a certain second generation. They have won at the starting line, and of course there is no need to work hard. After finally sending the good news to her brothers, Muju went to work again. She had nothing to do for a while, so she wandered around the village. The problems of medicine fields, medicine shops, workshops in the second village, pig houses and chicken coops, etc., were all solved this time. As for Lao Hei's motorcade, they set off for Qingming County on the 4th watch and were already 70 or 80 miles away. Thinking about how happy 6th brother will be when he receives the things from home, Ji-Yin couldn't help but also smile. Who doesn't look forward to the warmth at home when going out? When I finally returned to my old home, it was already 3 o'clock in the morning. Warner was waving her fan while flipping through the account books in the warehouse. Seeing her sister-in-law come in, she said, "Sister, the Gu family has sent things several times. Now that you are home, would you like to meet with Miss Gu and the others?" Ah! When my sister-in-law reminded me of the good news, she also smiled and said, "I would have really forgotten if my sister-in-law didn't tell me." Just at this moment, a carriage arrived at the gate. Soon the little girl brought an old nanny in. Warner recognized at a glance that she was serving Mrsger, so she asked, "Why are you here? But my aunt has something to say." The old nanny smiled and saluted, and responded, "The young lady is well, the princess is well. It's not that our second wife is in trouble, but Miss Bezu is back, and she wants to come and play with the princess. But it's too hot outside, and our second wife restrained her from coming out." Miss Bezu asked the old slave to ask, "When will the princess hold a flower viewing party?" Warner couldn't help but laugh when she heard it. Bezu is really, people who don't know it may think that she and the princess are biological sisters. She really wants to be together all the time, so she is happy. The old nanny also smiled and said, "So, I beg the princess to tell the exact date of the banquet, otherwise I'm afraid that Miss Bezu will make my ears tingle when I go back." Jiyan quickly responded, "Don't worry, Mom, I'm discussing it with my sister-in-law. The flower viewing party will be scheduled for tomorrow. Nanny will go back later and bring a box of snacks to Bezu to keep her quiet for a day." The old grandma was surprised, stood up and saluted again. Warner asked her a few questions, such as how Mrsger was eating and sleeping recently. After the homely conversation was finished and the snack box was ready, the old grandma went back to Jia's house. Jiyan asked for paper and pen, and after thinking about it, he wrote a post for the ladies he had made friends with. "I have been extremely upset about something recently, like knowing that the train is sliding down the cliff but still being unable to stop it. The good news is really hard to eat and sleep well, and my heart is always weighed down by a stone. At this time, it is also a good thing to gather the little sisters together and relax." So, in the afternoon, the girls who woke up from each family received a message from the princess's mansion. 2 updates today. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, delayed flowering. Chapter 1078. Chapter 1078, The liver and the brain are in ruins, no matter how hard it is. Gu Qingqing has adjusted her body well and is even much healthier than before. She had long wanted to thank her for the good news. She just glanced at the post and got busy and prepared a lot of things. Milan and Su 11 were very strictly disciplined by their family. Due to Jiyan's previous incident of slapping the noble girl, their family was actually not willing to allow them to visit Sujintan. But Mei Lan and Su 11 begged hard, and finally the family relented and allowed them to go out to play one last time. After all, they don't have much time at their parents' home, and they have no time to feel comfortable after getting married. Even so, Milan's family still asked her to bring her 2 concubines, who were called companions but were actually their eyes and ears. They were to carefully report Milan's words and deeds after she returned home. The next morning after dinner, Jiyan sent her carriage out. It's not that she dislikes the shabby carriages of each family, but she really feels sorry for the little sisters. Her carriage was specially built by her family. Not only was it spacious and comfortable, it also made her walking more stable. The carriage is covered with cashmere blankets, soft dolls, and pillows. Most importantly, there is an ice basin in the dark compartment under the base, which is very cool. Shui Ling sat on the shaft of the carriage and directed the driver to pick up Su 11 first, then the 3 Mei Lan sisters, and finally Beizhu. The little sisters got together in advance, so naturally there were endless flowers to talk about and endless little things to laugh about. Bao Zhu is a glutton, and he is also cute and enthusiastic. He is about the same age as Mei Yan's two concubines, and he soon became familiar with them. The two concubines were a little nervous at first, but who can resist a new partner who is charming and sincere? After a while, they were chatting with Bezu about what snacks were delicious. As for the third princess, she was driven by her own princess car and arrived at the princess's mansion in Sujintan a moment earlier than Bezu and others. Unlike the old house where the elders of the Li family and the villagers often come and go, the princess's mansion is a paradise independent of the village. Although this season, the sea of flowers in the orchard has already fallen. But facing the green fruit forest is still refreshing, and I feel much refreshed. The good news led everyone into the house, and Baozu made a fuss about going to the terrace on the second floor for fear of being bored in the house. Jiyan knocked on her and asked Shui Yun and others to quickly change the reception area. The terrace on the second floor is very spacious, shaded by grapevines, with log tables and exquisite carved lounge chairs. There is also a pond next to the wall, with water lilies and koi carp raised. The bottom of the pond is paved with a layer of white gravel, with a few rainflower stones with strange patterns. Everything is far from luxurious, but there is warmth and comfort everywhere. Su 11 and the others were not polite, and each found a chair they liked and sat down. Milan couldn't help but sigh, the princess will still enjoy the blessings. In such a good place, I won't be afraid of hot summer days. Even so, Su 11 was also joking, if the princess doesn't give us some delicious food today, she won't be able to make up for our jealous hearts. The third princess quickly joined in, don't worry about what you do, I want a double share. I've been starving and thin for a few days after the good news left the palace. Everyone looked at her double chin with strange expressions. The third princess blushed and shouted fiercely, what are you looking at? I drank too much water last night and I'm swollen. This poor excuse made everyone laugh. Milan's two concubines, who were still a little cautious at first, quietly breathed a sigh of relief when they saw this. Bezu took them one by one to the pond to feed the fish, and picked out beautiful rainflower stones along the way. Sister Jiyan, these rainflower stones are so beautiful, can you give us a few of them? Bezu found a star-patterned rainflower stone and couldn't put it down, so he asked for it. But she was not ignorant, so she added, I came back from my aunt's house the day before yesterday, and I brought a wooden attic with the doors and windows that can be removed, which is really fun. I'll trade that with you, okay? Jiyan was rolling up her sleeves and cutting fruit, planning to make fruit scoops for the little sisters. Hearing this, she responded, this rainflower stone was specially brought back to me from other places by my seventh brother, who selected them one by one. I am usually very precious. I kept it in this pond, but you, a bully, took notice of it. In this case, one person will give you one, and no more. Haha, Sister Jiyan is the best. I knew you would say that. Bezu was so happy that she ran forward and hugged Jiyan, acting coquettishly, I'll find a fish tank when I go back, put rocks in it, and raise koi. Milan's two concubines were a little embarrassed and wondered whether they wanted to put down the rainflower stones in their hands. Mei Lan smiled and said, the princess is a generous person. When she said she would give it to you, she really meant it? You just accept it? After you go back, when you have free time, you can just embroider a purse or handkerchief for the princess. The two little girls had a backbone, so they happily thanked them. Jiyan finished cooking the fruit, and the little sisters each shared a bowl. It was ice cold, and the sweet and sour taste made them all squint their eyes in happiness. While picking up the needle and thread, Gu Qingqing asked the maid to bring up a package. In the package was a dress that she had sewn for Jiyan herself. The shoulders and skirt were embroidered with large pieces of crab apples, which were warm, bright, and extremely beautiful. Princess, thank you for lending a helping hand to me in my difficult time and pointing out a way for me to survive. This is the dress I sewed for the princess with my own hands to express my gratitude. From now on, the princess will be my biological sister. Whenever the princess has anything to say. Jiyan shook her hand, with surprise in her eyes, and asked, Sister Gu, has your wish come true? Gu Qingqing nodded, blushing slightly and replied, it shouldn't be wrong, but the month is still light for the time being. Jiyan congratulated her repeatedly and told her, Sister Gu will definitely come over in a few days, and I'll ask the master to check your pulse. Thank you. Princess Gu Qingqing touched her flat belly and said with emotion, this is the bloodline I gave birth to for myself. I will definitely love him and cherish him, and I hope he will be my support for the rest of my life. Sister Gu, don't worry, this must be a good boy, smart, healthy, sensible and filial. Borrow my sister's good words. They were talking lively, but it took Mei Lan and Su 11 a while to understand, and they couldn't help but smile and say congratulations. Because of this incident, the barbecue at noon was cancelled and temporarily changed to stir-fry. Shui Yun also made a nourishing soup for Gu Qingqing, and Gu Qingqing drank it without leaving any sip. After dinner, the little sisters ran to play in the glass flower room. The glass roof that provides daylight in winter is now covered with a thick layer of straw curtains, and the surrounding areas are also opened. The breeze from the hall takes away the sweltering heat and makes it very cool. Su 11 is very familiar with them, but this is the first time for the two concubines of the Mei family. Beza volunteered to introduce them to novel things such as mango trees, banana trees, and lychee trees. Of course, it is inevitable to pick a few fruits to satisfy your craving. Jiyan didn't stop them, and asked Shui Ling to take out the lychees buried in the ice bucket. While eating, the third princess inhaled and called Binja from time to time, but she still kept talking. When the sun turned to the west, the third princess was the first to say goodbye. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1079. Chapter 1079. Who still remembers the soldiers who fought in battle? Jiyan walked her to the door, and then she asked coyly, Jiyan, your master is very good at diagnosis. Can you show it to Brother Lu? Jiyan was stunned for a moment, and then responded, of course, Brother Lu is my eldest brother's friend, and now he is your future husband. In any case, our family should help. But Princess, Brother Lu is very independent and his injuries are serious. Does he want outsiders to diagnose and treat him? I think you still need to ask clearly. He really needs it, and then ask someone to tell him. Otherwise, good intentions will lead to bad things, and it will also affect your relationship. Of course, the third princess was so happy that she replied repeatedly, I will go see Brother Lu right now and ask him carefully. Speaking of which, I have to thank you for calling me out to play, otherwise it would have been difficult for me to leave the palace. Neither my father nor the prince and brother wanted me to come out. The two chatted for a few more words, and the third princess rushed away happily. Shui Ling looked at the carriage going away and asked, Princess, do you want me to go say hello to the miracle Dr. Zhang? No need, Jiyan shook her head and replied, Shizalu will convince the third princess and will not invite Dr. Zhang to treat her. After saying that, she returned to the backyard. Su 11 and Mei Lan only came out once in a while, and they reluctantly said goodbye until dusk. Jiyan brought them a lot of snacks and fruits, and even Mei Yan's two concubines got a portion alone. The two little girls were surprised and excited, and thanked them profusely. You must know that they went back with their sister-in-law and only brought a small amount of things. They must be left in the main courtyard, and there is no chance of getting even a little bit. But for the sake of the Mei family's face and fear of being laughed at in the ears of the princess, she would definitely allow them to stay. In this way, their aunts and brothers and sisters can taste these rare fruits and snacks together. Good News sent all the little sisters away and returned to the old house. Because Zheng He sent the news back in advance, the kitchen was also frying and frying. Li Lauer and Mr. Wen got off the carriage with Muju, washed themselves and started eating. After saying good news to my sister-in-law, we went to the study to eat with the elders and talk along the way. In order to prepare for the crown prince ceremony and the selection of concubines, everyone in the 6 yamen was busy without touching the ground. Even idlers like Li Lauer and mouthpieces in the court like Mr. Wen were not spared. But the two of them are just helping to make small changes, and they are not chief officials. They only need to contribute their efforts and do not need to use their brains. Jiyan poured wine for the elder. After thinking about it, he also poured a glass of juice for Muju. Muju smiled brightly, which made Jiyan blush a little and glance at him secretly. Li Lauer saw it and laughed too, and said, "Let's change the bar for Brother Ju. It's really hard for him to be running around these days. I have nothing to do tonight. I'll have a few glasses of wine to relieve my fatigue." Mr. Wen also nodded, "Yes, thanks to the Marquis leaving Brother Ju behind, the news communication from everywhere is much faster and smoother." There was no good news, so he had to take another wine glass and pour the wine into a pot of Muju. Li Lauer raised his glass, clinked it with Mr. Wen and Muju, drank it all in one gulp, and sighed at the end. "I don't know what's going on over there in Jiangbei. I've always said everything is safe, but being so far away from home and having to fight barbarians, how can everything be fine? Wait a little longer, wait for the Marquis's decision. Most of the food raised by our family has been secretly transported to Jiangbei. Even if the third batch of military food from the imperial court is delayed, we can still supplement the Northern Expeditionary Army in time. We cannot let the soldiers and generals we fight on an empty stomach." Speaking of this, Mr. Wen also looked bad. But the situation in the court is such that everyone is staring at the prince and the concubine, and they all want to take an extra bite at this time of regime change. How many of you still remember the soldiers who fought on the battlefield? Jiyan's eyes were also gloomy. She forced a smile, picked up food for everyone, and advised, "My foster father must have a plan in his heart. Just try your best in everything. It depends on the plan and God's will." Li Lauer came to his senses and felt sorry for his niece. He was so troubled when he was a teenager, so he quickly agreed, "Yes, yes, do your best to obey fate. No matter what, we will talk about the future later. We have to eat and drink enough tonight." Everyone laughed and talked about the latest news in the city, and the dinner table became lively again. At this moment, it is also time to serve food in the camp of the Northern Expedition Army in Jiangbei. The soldiers took off their armor and tore off their clothes. Each of them held a large pottery bowl and gathered together to laugh, eat, and drink. The bonfire lit in the distance illuminated their smiling faces, making them extremely bright. But in the main tent, the generals who had already had dinner gathered together and frowned at an official document. There was a deputy general with a rough temperament who was the first to lose his composure and shouted, "What do you mean by the Ministry of War? I worked so hard with my head tucked into the waistband of my trousers that I managed to get here. Just one last step to drive the barbarians to the border. You actually asked us to stand by and look for an opportunity for a decisive battle? What do you think? That's right, we are more than 1,000 miles away from Zindu. We really thought the time was right and sent us to Zindu to ask for instructions, but the opportunity was missed. Zindu thought the time was right, but when the order came to us, the daylilies were cold." Another general was also very irritable. He punched his leg with his fist and said angrily, "This battle is really frustrating. The court has never taken care of us like this before when we went to war." A military commander next to him, who looked a little bookish, stopped his companion and did not let him continue. Over the past month or so, the imperial court has gained more and more control over the Northern Expeditionary Army. In normal times, when going on an expedition, the Marquis makes the final decision from beginning to end. At most, official documents will be exchanged when food, fodder, and ordnance need to be replenished. But now, in the past 7 or 8 days, I have received 2 official documents. This is like a strong man. When he fights with others, there is always someone nearby to give random instructions. So much so that a strong man will be at a disadvantage if his hands and feet are tied up. But the fight is not going well, and at most it only gets a few punches and kicks. But they were going on a war, and one decision could affect the lives and deaths of thousands of people. The tent fell into silence for a moment, and everyone looked at the Marquis who was in charge. The Marquis is looking at the map. Now the northern expedition has pushed to 700 miles north of the original Kyoto. In another 300 miles, the barbarians can be completely driven out of the border. At that time, the border gates will be renovated and strictly guarded. After a delay of 3 to 5 years, Tianhui will be completely victorious. The barbarians no longer had the strength to violate the customs on a large scale, and Tianhui finally got up. But at this time, if we obey the imperial court's orders and stop moving forward, this year's northern expedition will probably fall short again. The decisive battle will be replanned next year. I don't know how many changes will happen. Even the loss of food, grass, and weapons, the court cannot afford it. Seeing that there is a drought this year, at least military rations are a big problem. It is the best choice to combine all aspects together, fight to the border in one go, and have a decisive battle. At this moment, Li Laosi came in from the outside and reported, "Master Marquis, there is an urgent matter that needs your decision." The Marquis agreed, nodded with everyone and walked out. The 2 of them entered the small tent next to them. Li Laosi immediately took out a copper pipe and said, "Master Marquis, there is news from home." Mr. Ho quickly opened it, and Li Laosi couldn't help but leaned over and glanced at it. What he saw was that he gasped. How is this possible? 2 updates today. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1080. Chapter 1080, You will be outside, and your orders will not be accepted. The Marquis neatly tore up the note and burned it to ashes on a candle before responding, "Since it is not mentioned in the official document, this matter should not be announced for the time being. It cannot be disclosed to anyone except you and me." "It's, Mr. Marquis." Li Laosi was still a little dazed and shouted in a low voice, "Guli? Mr. Zhang? Well, wasn't Guli a beggar taken in by Mr. Zhang? And he also worked as a steward for Funiur. In charge of those branches all over the world." Mr. Ho was also anxious and walked slowly in circles in the tent. Such a big thing happens, but he is not in Zindu. If the family fails to cope with it, what seems like a great blessing to outsiders may turn out to be a disaster that destroys the whole family. But the matter has come to this, there is no point in worrying, he cannot rush back immediately. I can only hope that the prince cherishes feathers, and at least for the sake of a good reputation, he will not touch the Li family easily. And the Li family had better implement caution to the end and stay out of the trouble to stay safe. Fear of fear, after the prince was sealed, the concubine also ended. By then, the Li family knew the news and had no time to discuss it with him. They did something to protect the Northern Expeditionary Army and angered that person, and the result was in vain. Now that person's thoughts are on balancing the court and supporting the prince. The next half-month is our only chance, we must fight quickly. Master Ho's expression became more stern, and he was filled with murderous intent. "Ask Yeshan to send a message home and provide a batch of grain and grass to help us reach the border in one fell swoop." "Okay, I'll go find Yeshan right now. That kid Muju is very capable." After the food and grass were destroyed last time, he and his family began to secretly provide backup. Li Laosi responded excitedly, talking to Mu in his words. Chui was very satisfied. The Marquis thought of Muju and his daughter, and his expression softened, and he said, "Weren't you originally dissatisfied with Muju, but now you like him?" Li Laozi coughed twice and said harshly, "Who is satisfied with him? Fu Niuer is the best girl in the world, and no boy is worthy of her. However, Muju is not bad in comparison, at least if you are brave and capable, you will be put to good use." The Marquis didn't want to argue with him, so he opened the curtain and left the tent, heading back to the next door. Unexpectedly, Zhang Cheng walked towards him and asked, "Master Marquis, is there something going on at home?" The Marquis shook his head and said nothing more. Zhang Cheng then said, "Everyone is still discussing, and they are all a little angry. It is better for the Marquis to give some advice. There is no guarantee that anyone who has connections with Zindu will get into trouble if the news reaches that person's ears." The Marquis patted him on the shoulder and said, "I understand, come in and talk." Zhang Cheng lowered his head and entered the main tent with the Marquis, but Li Laozi turned around and walked into the dark night. As expected, the generals were still gossiping, and they were all dissatisfied with the imperial court. The emperor and his ministers in the new capital only knew how to live in a dream, and occasionally slapped their heads on the decisions they made and asked them to implement them. "I don't care about whether this decision is suitable for the situation in front of the eyes. It's really hateful." Seeing the Marquis coming back, some people were anxious and wanted to persuade the Marquis. As a result, the Marquis said, "The general is out, and the military orders are not obeyed. I will give a separate statement to explain the situation of the battle to the emperor. As for now, attack with all our strength and fight quickly. We will strive to completely drive the barbarians out of the border within half a month and completely recapture it Tianhui mountains and rivers." The generals were stunned for a moment, then became excited, and all responded, "Yes, Lord Marquis." Zhang Cheng hesitated for a moment and asked, "Master Marquis, the third batch of grain and grass has not been delivered yet. Do you want to wait a few days?" These words reminded the generals, and they all frowned. Even though it is summer and the horses can eat grass, tens of thousands of soldiers cannot eat grass and leaves to satisfy their hunger. What's more, the drought is so severe that if it continues like this, it will be hard to find grass and leaves. However, the Marquis gave everyone a reassuring pill in time, "Don't worry, I have my own arrangements and will not let the soldiers starve to fight. Everyone go down and prepare. We will break camp tomorrow and advance north quickly." Everyone agreed again in unison, and no one questioned where the Marquis would supply food and grass. In the northern expedition, the words of the Marquis have always been more credible than the imperial edict. The night is dark, like an invisible giant beast staring at the world, which makes people feel depressed and fearful. In the broken gold beach, the young and old men were sleeping well. Because the master is back and everyone has a backbone, they have been working extra hard these days. If it were such a drought in previous years, everyone would be so worried that they would want to go to heaven and earth. After all, food is the most important thing for the people, and a loss of food production is a life-threatening matter. But now they don't have to worry at all. Since the beginning of welcoming guests, Hot Spring Valley has used food instead of money to collect entrance fees. Although it's not much per day, only a few hundred kilograms of grain input. But it cannot last as time goes by, and more food is stored. The poor past has made everyone develop the habit of prudence and thrift. The village only sells the old grain from the previous year at the beginning of spring every year, keeping the grain harvested from last year and this year as a base. The beginning of spring this year is not looking good, so the village chief has made the decision and the old grain has not been sold. For this reason, the village built 2 more small granaries, but they still couldn't accommodate them. Fortunately, the princess found a way to store the grain in a reliable place. So, drought is annoying, but it is within the acceptable range of people in Broken Gold Beach. Heaven's heart is the most merciful. If there is a drought this year, things will definitely get better next year. In the words of the village chief, don't scare yourself, live the life in front of you first. In this section, men, women, and children in the village go to fetch water whenever they have free time. Even if they fetch 1 load a day, they can ensure that the 2 fruit trees on the mountain are full. In the morning, the thin morning mist in the mountains dispersed, revealing an orchard that was much greener than elsewhere. The villagers would smile proudly when they saw it. Jiyan had eaten, and as soon as he arrived at the front yard, he was pestered by Dehe and Erhe. These 2 loyal guards followed Uncle Zhao and others on night patrol last night and contributed a lot. Jiyan secretly fed them a few fish cakes, patted their big heads lovingly, and told them, "Don't let Santiao find you, be careful of him scratching you. This is his favorite snack." Dehe and Erhe didn't know if they understood, so they wagged their tails crazily. Just as Wanner came over, she couldn't help laughing when she saw this. "I don't know where Mugard found this good dog. It's really sensible and obedient, and it recognizes people very quickly. It never bites people in our village, but outsiders can tell the difference extremely accurate." After saying that, she ordered the maid to go to the kitchen to get food for Dehe and Erhe. Jiyan looked up at the sun and asked his sister-in-law, "Uncle He and the others will be back in 2 days, and then they should go to Big Brother's place again. Sister-in-law, let's go shopping in the city today and buy some jade pendants and hairpins for my eldest brother. If there are new books, buy some more. My eldest brother likes them. It's also great to give to friends or students. After all, the Southwest is too desolate, and these things are far less abundant and comprehensive than our new capital." Wanner has been back for a few days and has almost settled all the trivial matters. She was very happy when her sister-in-law asked her to go shopping, and she immediately agreed. "Okay." When Uncle He and the others set off again, the fleet will also be heading south. Linlang and Huan Huan are both pregnant. I will also choose some longevity locks and collars for the children. End of this chapter.